T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to this session of Time of the Writer. We'll be discussing writing as embodiment and emancipation. My name is Annabel Nyongwana. I'm going to be your moderator for today. And today I'm not traveling alone. I have two lovely people next to me, Rachel and Nobantu. And we will be introducing this session in two slightly unorthodox ways through a piece that we jointly wrote, thinking about some of the themes of the festival, as well as our own kind of topic as writing as embodiment and emancipation. So we'll be reading that poem for you, and then we're going to move into a body scan to take cognizance of the body and being within our bodies in the space. And yeah, so that's what we'll be doing today. And hashtag Time of the Writer 2025. Do you want to start, Nobantu?
Thank you so much, Annabel, for that introduction. And I'm so happy we could all be in the same room. It's nice to connect with humans. And this body is about writing from the body or not from the body. But Annabel will take us more into that. So I will start with our first verse. And here I go. In the curves of my shoulders, as stories held, a weight that's been carried, a burden to unfold. The memories of touch, of pain, and of fear are stored deep within my muscles year after year.
It feels like it's under my skin, itching to get out. It's my body spitting it out, my body rejecting what this world is giving.
Dismembered parts strewn about the dusty room. The sun peeking through the stretched clouds makes them look beautiful. Beautiful, left to rot. Too young, once lit up the room. Golden things. I think, Nobantu, do you want to share what your process was in constructing this verse and the little secret thing that you used to construct this verse?
Well, the little secret thing that I used to construct this verse is no longer so secret. I mean, it's a highly competitive market now. So I will just bring us a little back when we were thinking about this session and we're like writing from the body and emancipation. And Annabel wonderfully said, how about we just all write a collective poem about, from the body? And I think for me, I really was interested in how disconnection looks like before connection. And so I did use AI, and I asked AI to write this poem, and I gave it a few prompts on trauma and all of that. And I wanted to see how close it could get to my thinking. And however, I saw that outsourcing one's own thinking and emotional bypassing through AI is quite a futile exercise, because no matter how many prompts I told it to improve, it just could not get the essence of what it is to be human and writing from the body and writing from the stories that are stored within our bodies. So this was my own little exercise as well, because my body has taken in so much in this year. We're only in March, but there's so much that I've taken in, especially as a student and as a writer, as a worker as well, So I sort of, you could say there was a state of avoidance. And I sort of empathize with a lot of youth as well that are also outsourcing to AI. And it sort of put me in their shoes. However, doing that also brought me back to myself and valued more of my voice and valued actually connecting with my body and being in love more with my body and actually going into the exercise of holding pen to paper and actually going into that exercise. It made me more appreciative of that process. The fact that I could, through the different iterations that the AI spat out, I won't name the AI, but I could tell that it was just fumbling. It really did not have a sense of self, which is what we have. That's the value of who we are as humans, that sense of self.
So it was attempting to connect, but it couldn't connect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
it
so
was attempting.
yeah, so it could be an example of kind of disembodied writing, writing without the body. I think that's what our current day and age is really pervaded by, this disembodied writing. Do you find that?
No, most definitely. Sometimes even like within like the realm of writing and the realm of like reading and editing, you will find something. It's like, okay, this was clearly written by AI. And I think even just getting to the point, at least within the academia, where students are encouraged to use AI because it's not something that can be avoided, but to then declare, then you have to say, okay, cool, I used AI, this is what I used it for. So AI is here to stay. And I think what Nobantu is saying is very important, because you then have to know for yourself, what can I use AI for? To what extent can I employ AI? And then bearing in mind the knowledge that there's only so much that AI can do. Your body exists as a form, and writing, firstly, before AI, comes from the body. And then how do you then use yourself to work together with AI to then produce work or to not produce work?
Yeah.
So that's really, for me, what I can say about writing on AI. My own experience with writing the 4 lines was kind of like what Nobantu is actually saying. It was an avoidance. We discussed this for so long, and each time I was like, okay, cool, today is the day I'm going to write these 4 lines. And my fingers would just hover on top of the screen, and I'm not going to type anything. And I'm like, maybe today. So it was the whole thing of, okay, where is my body in this? How much of my body do I want to put into this 4 lines? How much of my body do I not want to put into this 4 lines? So just sitting with my thing, and it was such an experience to sit down and think, but I write so much. Why is this 4 lines so difficult to write? And then realizing that it was not just a matter of, okay, I write so much, but it's also, I'm representing this. This is from my body. I get to share this with other people. What am I sharing to them? I think it was that aspect of having to avoid that was maybe a bit of a pushback.
So I think what's coming out in both of the responses is a kind of imperative to connect and to reconnect with that body, right?
Yeah.
In a very meaningful way, not only to show writing that is meaningful and connected, but authentic to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think as writers, we don't always think about the stories that are written in the body. Right? What is your body saying? And I think that this next exercise that we're going to do, the body scan, might help us kind of connect with that element that I think we always think that writing is very mind focused. But I think what we want to do in this session is bring it into the body.
Yes.
Reconnect it again with that side.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Annabel. So we are connecting from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And we're overlooking the city right now, the big tall rising buildings. And we're also wondering where everyone is. So if you could also share in the chat, maybe your location and what it's colloquially known as, where you are from. So if you are in a room like ours and you are able to plant your feet on the ground, have the chair to the back, relax those shoulders back. If you're in a car, probably you're not driving, and you could maybe in your seat also just find a sense of center, and again, your feet on some surface and hands on your thighs. And so we're going to go into a brief body scan with a few deep inhales and exhales. And as we are inhaling deep, I invite everyone online and in the room to actually breathe in. And as you're breathing in, you can take that breath from the top of your head all the way down, past your face, probably down your neck, down your chest, down your shoulders, your arms. This breath is going all the way to your torso, down to your back of your bone, your back of your back, and down your thighs, back of your thighs, to the knees, down to the ankles. And this, you're supposed to be relaxed in the state. So that breath, take it nice and easy. And exhale as it reaches the bottom of your feet, all the way down to your toes. And we're going to inhale again. And so we're taking this breath now from the bottom of your feet all the way up. And you know the pace of your breathing. And let it be a relaxed breath, not so much of a labored breath. If you are uncomfortable with opening your eye, closing your eyes, you can look at a point where you can gaze to, and we can breathe in 3, 2, 1 from the bottom of the feet. And exhale. And at this point, you should feel your whole body expanding. And remember, as you breathe in, your rib cage must expand like those automatic gates that open like that. So we're going to do one last breath now from the top of the head again, going down. And don't forget your face. Don't forget your head. Bring the breath down to over your eyes, your nostrils, your lips, down again, down your chin, down the neck, down your shoulders. And as we're taking this last breath, I invite you to think about which part of your body really wants to speak today. Is it your shoulder? Is it your left eye? Is it the left nostril? Which part of the body wants to speak today? So we're going to take that last breath from the top of the head. Nice and easy, relaxed breath. This breath, remember, has to go through the whole body. From the top of the head again, 3, 2, 1. And we inhale. And it's going down. It's going down. Down, 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 and exhale as it reaches the bottom of your toes. And we're coming back to center. And if your eyes were closed, you can slowly open them up. If your eyes were fixed on a point in the room, you can slowly bring your attention back to the screen and back to the voices and the faces that are in the frame of the screen. Yeah. How do you feel, Annabel?
I think for me, I wasn't used to breathing that slow. So I found my breath like quickening, right? But I think taking cognizance of my body really helped me release a lot of the tension that was in my body, I think, beforehand. I think for me, during it, I felt something almost break. I don't know why, but I think there was a lot of tension in my body. And it's now gone through. And I also want to know, Lasal, if you had that same kind of release rupture experience.
Yes, but I also think part of that is like the nervousness for this. That also is just like, okay, I'm breathing in, and within like the daily life and each person's like daily movement, you're not very cognizant of like your body in that way, in that, oh, today my shoulder feels a bit like it wants to express something, or that my left eye, and just taking the time to actually go through your body and feel what part of your body feels a certain way, and maybe think to yourself, why is it feeling a certain way? That's just like a bit of a difference or change in the thing that I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. Breathing is quite an automatic function, right? It's only when you're born when they have to like smack you to like tell you now it's time to breathe, right? Because you have not been, it doesn't come automatically at that point of birth, but from there on until you die, you don't really need to think about breathing. And then when we start to tell ourselves to breathe, the mind focuses on the energies that we take into the body. And these energies are stored, and there's stories behind why they're stored the way that they are stored. And so I always love this exercise to just see which parts of your body want to be unlocked, which parts of your body want to be channeled, and which give voice to the parts of your body that we so often forget about, so being more embodied in our practice of writing and as artists.
Yes. Do you think that the writing process would have been altered, right, had you begun with a breathing practice rather than mind, body, emancipation, let's go?
Most definitely. Most definitely, because the aim and like the prompt was to write something that connects with writing as emancipation and writing as embodied. And immediately you start thinking, okay, what do I write? But if you had like done a body scan first, if you had like centered your body, you would kind of have more of a direction to go, because you kind of then are writing from the body. You know, it's not just that like you're writing thinking about the body, it's you writing from the body, because you have centered yourself in your body. You have centered your thoughts in your body. You're not just like thinking of your body from this, oh, this is my body and it's here to just exist as I go on and live my life. But it's part of the living, it's part of the writing, it's part of the being, you know. So it would have definitely been a different experience, less hoovering and more, maybe just like more writing.
And even writing elsewhere from a different place about a different thing. And I think for me, the body is super important in characterization, right? In bringing real and true authentic characters to life. Yesterday, I was telling a story about an old lady that I saw coming into the taxi, and I was just taken aback by the way that she was so determined by her body, and you could see that she was really, really struggling. Every step that she took was just painful, right? And there was sweat on her brow. And she, in her labors, I really felt like I knew a piece of her right in there. And I think definitely as we get older, the body really takes a kind of centering that it doesn't always in your youth, right? You become determined by these kind of body pains, these stagnant pockets about the body. What do you think about that idea of stagnant pockets? Of pain.
I think it's Basil van der Kolk who wrote that beautiful book that everyone's reading nowadays, or quoting, where it says the body speaks. And so you are also talking about the body language that we read, but here it's more of like the body stories, right? You're seeing this old woman, and in those little gestures, they're signaling a certain story of a certain time or of a certain moment. You know, as you know, the body, you can't fault the body. You can do as much plastic surgery as you want, but when the body moves, it tells those stories. And we see it. I think South Africa is specific in that way, where the body is also political, because the visible walking bodies are not usually from a certain class. And so we sort of know the stories of class through how the bodies move in the spaces and how they navigate certain buildings and spaces. You know, so the body speaks, and there's a body language that we can sort of interpret through observation, you know. And I think that's where writing from the body is also important, because we do have to be empathetic to our readers, or be an empathetic reader as well. So maybe be an empathetic writer. Yeah.
And just to tie into that, actually, the body taking in things kind of works the same with like Freud's idea of the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. In interpreting this woman's movement, it was not a cognizant, oh, she's wincing because of this. You related on a different level, because it's literally what you have seen, what you've taken. And like sometimes that's exactly how, even with writing and with emancipating and just like creating this purging for yourself works. You are taking in things the entire time, consciously, unconsciously, throughout your day. And those things sit in your body, they build up. So now it becomes a matter of how you're letting these things go. Are you even letting them go? Because if you're not letting them go, then they build up and they build up, and eventually you become like determined. How do you now process that for yourself? How do you sit down and you say, okay, this is how I am dealing with the things that I've taken in, and just how cognizant are you of the things that you have embodied in that sort of way? So, yeah.
I think definitely what's coming up in both comments is the idea of the body as a kind of repository, right? A thing that stores.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that idea of the things that are stored and storing in the body?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, that the body stores. And if you have to look at your own body and look at the scars that it tells, I mean, even in African culture, there's certain ways of looking at the body and knowing which age you are at, who your age mates are, or what rite of passage you should be going through. And I mean, we could go into a whole debate about the usability of that or the ethics of that, but it was a way of reading each other and finding community in some sense. And I'm interested in hearing those stories from the bodies as well.
Yeah, definitely also for our viewers to just reflect on the stories that are written in your body. What positions, what portions of your body want to speak right now. And yesterday we were touching on trauma as well.
Yes.
Right? And how writing can also be a mechanism not only for that release of that trauma, but the way that other people can get to grappling with and also free themselves of that trauma, and also an opening for other people to engage with something in a different way. And I think Nobantu has an interesting story about her writing, right, and how it resulted in this cathartic moment of release of trauma.
Yeah, so I've always identified as a writer. I'm not like classically trained writer. I didn't go to school for it. It's just something that I did in my spare time, and it just so happened that I could make it my vocation, meaning it's an occupation that I enjoy and I get paid for it. But then I later on in my life had to confront my own traumas, and I'd gone through talk therapy, I'd gone through other counselors and social workers and psychologists. And it's only when I came to trauma therapy, right, which it uses trauma therapeutic techniques for psychoanalysis and processing of trauma. It's only then when I really started to confront my traumas authentically and truthfully and actually be able to process what that trauma did to me and how to release it and how to shift, so sort of move from that victimhood or move from dysfunctional ways of operating. Sometimes you look like you're winning in life, but in some ways you are dysfunctional, and it's because of the ways that trauma has been inscribed and encoded in your psyche. But it's also because of the body. So my trauma was also bodily, and I had to process that in a bodily way, and processing it in a bodily way by telling my story through the body, and then writing about telling my story through the body. As you can tell, we like writing a lot.
Very much.
So and that unlocked new, like I just became boundless in the way that I inhabit space, and I became more at home with myself and in my body. So I. Because you can find home with others, you can find home, you can move to places, but you take yourself there. So it really grounded me.
Rachel, can we talk about steel wool?
Sure, definitely we can.
It'll come clearer now about steel wool and that experience.
So a few years ago, I'm walking through the streets of like downtown Josie. There is a street vendor there. She's like selling steel wool. And now it's in the morning, so I'm headed to a place and I see that. And the entire time it's just like playing in my head. And like it's playing in my head and I go, oh, that's interesting. That looks like hair. It looks like an afro, but like still wool. So I go with that thought in my head. I go back home still with the same thought. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna have to pen this down. So I write it, and I write about like how the still wool resembled hair and all stuff, and I write that. And I remember it was around the time of brown skin girl, your hair, whatnot, like wool, all that stuff. And I was just thinking about how that could be like a compliment. And I remember as we were sharing this with Nobantu and Annabel yesterday, Nobantu was like, oh, but like someone has told me that my hair is like still wool. And we had a whole discussion after that about like, was that a good compliment? Was that not a compliment? And then that kind of tied back into like Freud and what we've taken in as this is what a compliment should look like. This is what a compliment does not look like. And I remember, Annabel, you said something very interesting. You said that, but that could be a compliment, that could have been a matter of, oh, wow, that is a steel wool and the different things that steel wool represents. And you can like, you said how it cleans, it purifies, it's strong, it's all these things. So just like thinking about like steel wool in a different way, but also representation, because it was through seeing that, writing it, that we then spoke about like what not necessarily what writing means, but like what writing can do, what interpretation can do, and how the way in which you write about things, speak about things, see things affect the way in which other people will then receive it or also see it. But also at the same time, everybody's an individual. So you might say something to me and you say it as a compliment, but I take it in. And because of my own things and because of how I then process it in a totally different way.
So I think the words that came up, right, and I think it could be a nice prompt for later on, is words as chains of liberation.
Yes.
I really like that phrase, right, in the sense that writing can bring on, right, a different representation, a different understanding of, say, this insult of saying your hair is like steel wool. Right, on one level, right, you could have been having all your life this idea as an insult, and then this piece can allow you to strip yourself away from that into almost like a liberated way of seeing it and saying it is like steel. It's strong like steel. And I think that's what we mean when we say writing as emancipation. And I also thought of Sarah Bartman, came up in some of my drafts about the session in the way that that poem had the ability to return home a body, bring home a body physically, right?
Is this Diana's poem?
Diana's beautiful poem about Sarah Bartman.
Yeah.
And I was just stunned at that potential of writing and writing moving beyond the page. Yeah. Have you ever seen that in your life?
I have actually. In undergrad, we had like a whole poetry literary club thing that we had going on. And each week someone else had to come up with a topic. And sometimes you receive this topic and you think, this is such a fluffy, fairy little topic. This is going to be great. You go home, you write about it, you're like, I trusted this, it's stuck. And then once we meet again and everybody's sharing, you realize that everybody's like kind of written different pieces. And sometimes it was through someone voicing their own thing, whether it's like traumatic and on like a very spectrum sort of scale of trauma, you could just tell that through their expressing of their own trauma, they were then giving permission for other people to express their own trauma. So just to tie into that writing as liberation, like you write, you liberate yourself, but also at the same time, your liberation becomes somebody else's liberation, and that does essentially create that chain of liberation, because I hear your writing or I hear your speaking, I see your trauma, and that gives me permission to express my own, to purge myself of the things that I've taken in. And sometimes when you put pen to paper, you write about things you didn't consciously think about, and you often find people like, when you're writing and read to them a piece, you find people say, also, what inspired that? And the line between this was purely fictional and this was inspired by like my own thoughts or experiences sometimes is very thin and can easily be blurred.
What does that mean to you, this idea of writing as chains of liberation? And I know from a drama perspective, you guys work a lot physically, right? And then there's obviously script writers and other people who are focused on the writing side. How does that map onto your way of processing trauma and as well as depicting stories?
Yeah, so we always encourage the authentic retelling of one story. And the beauty of that, as you said, your liberation becomes my liberation. It's also making me think of Fanon's writing as well. And so it's sort of paradoxical, but there's a freedom in that phrase of writing as chains of liberation. Yeah, it's quite paradoxical because chains, I think our people do not have a really good relationship to it. But I think that we are breaking that perception through the framing of thinking of writing through the chains of liberation. I'm also thinking of this other writer, but she writes about the wake. Basically, when a ship moves through the water and leaves you can see the water being split apart. And there was a video I saw on social media not so long ago. There was a flood, and there were people cycling behind this car, and all the cyclists stopped. But this one cyclist decided to go right behind the tires of this of this car, and because where the car goes, the water splits and it becomes shallow and shallow, and so it becomes easier for the cyclist to get to the other side. And I think that's what the writing does, the process of writing in that embodied way. It liberates others and makes it an easier channel for others to process their own traumas, but also to process their own joys. It's not always dark and moody, so there's also stories of joy, there's also stories of overcoming. And that is why, as I'm just linking it back to the beginning, AI can never capture that essence of humanness, the humanity that we share, and the experiences that are all specific to us, because we are all perceivers of our reality. And by writing about it, we make connections and shape the dimensions of this reality.
Yeah. I think a lot has came up in our discussions, but I think it's useful now to get into writing. So we're going to do a writing free write, right, for 5 minutes, thinking about writing and words as chains of liberation. I think that is the main prompt. Words as chains of liberation. Also thinking around what part of you wants to speak right now? What part of your body wants to speak? What story is it telling? What stories have other bodies in the space told? So we'll go into that free write. In all your spaces, please do take out a piece of paper, even if it is your phone, your laptop, anything you might have on hand. And let's just write for 5 minutes, connecting. If you want to redo that body scan, please do. Yeah. Coming up. Okay. I think we can share. Nobantu, do you want to start us off and let us know what came up for you in the piece? If you're safe, you can read the piece as well.
Wow. I just want to take a moment for appreciation. That was beautiful. Yeah, I just went into it, you know. Yeah, and it's easier than the first time when we had to do the poem. And I think that also speaks to writing in community. You guys are my community. There's no, let me just check these different AIs. But I'm really just absorbing and appreciative of the last 5 minutes. And I will share on what I wrote. I will read it to you, of course, and to the people on the screen. So, chains that are as light as candy floss, strong as metal, soft as cotton, this paradoxical existence in the city of gold, where bodies weave up and over each other, over cars, over trolleys, over homeless bodies, over train tracks, and under the bridge, under the delusion of grandeur, and under the umbrellas in the pouring rain, pelting on tattooed skin. Young girls walk like the earth is made of marshmallows, like the towering buildings are their audience. They float over the sewage spills running down the dark side of the street. They are not afraid of the wet tar. They are not afraid of the rain hitting their soft skin. This youth, this generation, lavishing in the fruits of liberation.
Can you repeat that line of the weaving? I loved that element of weaving inside there. Weaving bodies, I think you talked about somewhere in the...
Yeah, it's quite a long sentence. It says, this paradoxical existence in the city of gold, where bodies weave up and over each other. And then over cars, over trolleys, over homeless bodies, over train tracks, and under the bridges, under the delusions of grandeur, and under the umbrellas, and the pouring rain pelting on tattooed skin. Yeah.
Why was it important for you to bring into the city as featuring as also a body in itself? It's almost like you personified Joburg in such a clear way.
Yeah, that's a yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
So usually the people talk of the city as very harsh and hard, and I'm looking now at the city of Joburg, actually, for those who are watching. So, and the way that we engage with, or the people that I've observed living with, engaging with the city, I also live in the city. And whenever I tell people, they're like, "Are you okay? Are you fine?" I'm like, "I'm fine. It's okay. It's a place where people live and work." But of course, I can't avoid the smells and the sewage spills and the homeless and all of that. But the way that we engage, that I see the bodies that engage with the city, most of the time Black bodies, is a very tender way of treating the city and treating each other. Even though the city does have little breaks and cracks, it also reminds me of that old woman you spoke about in the beginning. It does have its little leaks over there. Like this, we should not be seeing this liquid, but we see it. And then you see the youth of the city just, floating over the sewage spills, laughing, enjoying this life, not daunted by the largeness of the city. And so it sort of becomes a friendly giant to them, I'm fascinated by somehow some people walk on the city like it's just this is a soft land, and it's like it's really not that soft, and there's you can count the spots where there's like greenery or environments, but I guess in some way it is a love letter to the city and the march
and the bodies of that city.
And now I'm thinking, and the bodies of the city, and how these bodies navigate the city. Yeah.
Rachel, do you want to share your piece?
I think before I share, just to preface it, right? This was a bit hard for me to just go right into it. And I think what made it so hard was discussing the body and writing at length. So now there's just like so much going in my head. I'm like, what am I writing about then? What do I pen down? So I think I started with the liberation and then went into it. And I brought in some of Prof. Pumna Dinokala's work, and I guess it's just a feminist student in me. Okay, so I'll start with sharing and then we can discuss it after. What is freedom to me, in the words of Prof. Kola? Is a bit like thinking, a bit like breathing, a bit like living, words shaped by thoughts and thoughts shaped by words. Sometimes like little chains, they get all mangled up. Other times, like chainmail, they protect. Perhaps writing demands more of me than I'm willing to give. A sacrifice of more than just my body. Perhaps writing demands that I give it my mind, my words. As I seek to represent myself in my freedom, in my words, perhaps writing seeks that I remain enchained to my body, and that in that lies my liberation. That is.
We both ended in liberation.
That is. I think it was just in trying to find an anchor for this writing, and I think in that I kind of took away some elements of the free-writing because there was like so many thoughts, and I couldn't pen everything down. But also, I think the poet in me is a diehard, and just wanted to make this a bit of a poem of sorts.
I think I like that you bring in such a prolific researcher who's Prof. And this exercise also shows us as researchers how we can sort of do that dance with our research papers. Like we write towards it, and then sometimes we like, no, I'm going to write to escape from it. And that little, what needs to come up comes up. So it's interesting that you start with that. But I just like how we both ended with liberation.
And I think just to add on to what you're just saying about like writing and how we write towards our research and we run away from our research. When we were having a conversation yesterday, we kind of like speak about how writing sometimes is like a watch pot, and like the saying that a watch pot never boils is the same thing with like writing, because you would look at the pot standing there for a minute and nothing is happening. There is no boiling water. But that doesn't mean underneath the surface, the water isn't becoming warmer, that it's reaching closer to its like boiling temperature. And I think the same thing happens with writing. You want to see the written process, you want to have that on paper, but like what about everything else, the sense making that is happening behind, in your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, sometimes even in your conscious mind. You read something, you actively sit down and you think about it, and you think about, what am I going to do with this writing, what am I going to do with this reading, and just like perceiving writing as a process. It doesn't have to necessarily look the way you want it now. You can always come back to it. And I think that's the beauty of like words and of writing. You can always come back to it. And it's like the same with the AI prompt in the beginning. You came back to it and you wanted the AI to do more. In the same way, you can want your words to do more. You can want your work to do more.
And I liked how you brought in reading as well. right? And escapism. And I think other people's writing can also help you escape from a particular reality, right? And you put yourself in another person's shoes for a second. And I like that idea as not only writing, but also reading as healing and bringing in these antidotes to some of the things that you might hold in your body. I also like these mango chains, right? Sometimes these words get mixed up and jumbled up and they don't come out in a linear way. My piece, I don't think I necessarily ended on liberation, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But
It's fine.
I returned back to the old woman. So I wrote, she ambled from across the road, her crutch clutched tightly in one hand. With all her might, it stuck out like a jaunty mechanical limb, an extension of her pain, an extension of her malady, the one that bled from the beads of sweat on her face, and her leg that once ran, that once loved with all its weight. I felt like I knew her, that body in its expansive rippling and ripping all the way against God's knife, that wire edge we all sat on in that teetering taxi, in that rumbling taxi. She said that was the sound she made, and we were all in it. We all almost said together, surrogate bodies implanted with her pain.
I love the idea of like implanting our bodies in other people's pain. And within at least my field, what we were looking at the last time, actually, I think just late last year, was the responsibility that we have as writers to accurately represent things without making it an issue of voyeurism. How do you exist? How do you present what you have seen without you just making it something that you're just gazing at? You know, like what power are you giving the gaze? And just how you embed yourself within other people's work, but also with the consciousness that this isn't my life. I get to be part of this only for a certain while, and I must extract myself. But at the same time, my work on this remains. So how do you make sure that your work remains in a way that does not violate the other person, but also when you look back onto it years from now, you're proud of what you did, not just as a writer, but as a fellow sympathetic human being.
What do you think about that? In what ways do you think we might just get a little bit more connected in that way so that we don't begin to appropriate other people's bodies for our own gain, you know, our own narratives, right? Because she's a body in this space. She was a human being.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that's a beautiful piece and searingly truthful to the realities of the world that we live in Johannesburg. But there's I'm thinking of these chains. There's a connection of some sort that you had to others in the space in the taxi and the woman, but it was not voyeuristic. I'm gonna go back to the word of empathy. It's very empathetic. So yeah. So in what ways?
So in what ways can we begin to be empathetic in an authentic way and not appropriate other people's body? And how do we begin to like recognize those cues in our writing when it's like, you know what I mean? You're just using it for the sake of using it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, writing with sensitivity and consideration that each person has their own life and their own story to tell. So you begin by telling your own story first, and it goes back to the capital I, the big I, and engaging in reflective writing all the time. You know, even if you're writing fiction, you could reflect on why you wrote a certain person in that way or described them in that way. But we begin by connecting with our own bodies and not being afraid of our own stories as they come up, because we are living life very automatically, and then there's certain times where you're like, oh, actually, that's a story that I've held on to for so long. maybe I should retell it and let it go. And actually, what's the story of 2021? You know, maybe, so it's a lot of introspection and retrospection as well. But yeah, it goes back to writing from your own body and embodied writing, and not I wouldn't say not, but initially just write from yourself and you look at the ethical ways of AI. I don't use AI as my writing companion. I just use it to test it. I just love to test that machinery and software. And in testing it, apparently it learns, but it will never learn how it is to be human. No amount of coding in the universe could hold the expense, the extensiveness of the human reality, from BC to now. There's no way listening to each other and reading each other. Yeah.
And also what I'm thinking sometimes as well as writers, sometimes it's not writing. There's a power in writing as well as not writing, right? And I think Gen Zs have this thing of saying, touch grass, go touch grass. You're talking about that phrase. And I think there's something useful in that we picked up yesterday into say like, go outside, right? Connect with nature. Be part of the expansiveness of the city, right? Maybe it's not about depicting a story of a person in words. Maybe you dance that story first, sing that story first, put that in nature, plant that story. I think that's also something that can help.
That really makes me think of when we had a session with the learners at Josie Book Fair.
Yes, Josie Book Fair.
And how the stories just organically came out when they embodied their stories, and then their stories were reflected to each other. So I tell you my story and you don't go, oh, I hear you saying, you actually show me what you heard. And that organic process where everyone becomes poets and storytellers just from writing from, embodiment. It's amazing. It's a beautiful process.
And just on the Josie book first as well. I remember we started off with like a warm-up exercise. And at some point, our warm-up exercise, at least the representation of our morning, was so similar. We all had the same sort of like experience in trying to get to the book fair on time, and then even in our representation of it. And I just remember, like, looking back at it now, the more people represented their morning, the more details came out in that representation. And it's just to touch back on like the permission, because like the more people represented, this morning I had a struggle to get here. The more detail you got about, it was a struggle for me too, and it's like that's the specificity of like my struggle, and it was eye-opening.
I like the word permission, right? So you grant people the permission to tell their stories by being a very good listener. And by I know there's this trend of we listen, we don't judge, but by truly not judging, you're just a receptacle for the stories, So it's transposed onto you, but it's the teller's story and it stays with them because it's in their body. And so, as you're saying, touch grass and be a good listener. The moments of stillness, we are so afraid of those moments of stillness between us humans. And I think you captured that even beautifully in your short retelling. How there was a stillness in that taxi, but there was a connection that was unspoken.
I think also just a little bit of context on the Josie Book Fairs, that we told the students to begin to reflect on their mornings physically in their bodies and do a cute scene about it. And a lot of these kind of ideas came through there and everyone became a storyteller. But what I think came through in this session is the idea of the body as a repository, something that can hold words, release words to other people, and also result in other people being able to release for themselves, and also being then connecting, right, through words as chains of liberation, as well as moving in the body, reconnecting the body, and using. I think these are the kinds of themes that we wanted to show, and also sometimes writing is also about not writing, stepping out, feeling it, moving it, dancing it is also writing, and it has this beautiful emancipatory quality, right? Not only on a physical sense with release of emotions, but changes the world as well and connects people in our little communities.
Yes.
And we are coming to a slow close right now. But yeah, we hope that you guys enjoyed it at home, and we're looking forward to seeing your stories or your questions. Do you guys have any final words to share?
I think for me, it's just to add on to like the idea of what we see writing as, and all of us coming from the writing program, we know that in the program it's so intensive, and so like our perspective of writing and Pam's favorite words, like we see writing as thinking, and we see writing as being, and I think just through this discussion we've seen how in seeing writing as thinking and seeing writing as being, it becomes embodied. Writing in itself exists as an embodied activity. And it exists as a sort of sense-making activity. And you can't necessarily extrapolate writing from your body or like from anything. It's just part of who we are. Because as you're thinking, you're writing in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought in the writing program. It's such an amazing community of writers, and in that way, writing is beyond just the page.
The quote from Maridoma Patrice Some. And he says, you are your own best evidence. You are your own best witness. But you must be aware that we have no knowledge or maps of the frontier between these worlds. So yes, that's my
final words.
Final words. And just wanted to say thank you to the UKZN in terms of the writer.
Yes.
And this writing center.
And the writing program.
And the writing program,
Just to say thank you to everybody for listening as well, for staying with us through this discussion. And we're looking forward to seeing your questions, points, confusions. Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. Connect with us on the socials.
Yes, on Facebook as well as YouTube. Just search it up, Time of the Writer 2025. And yeah, post your engagements. Some of us also on Instagram. Pop us messages, emails, if you'd like as well.
Yes.